Hello, and welcome to lecture 6. In the last lecture, we focused on how we can take other people's functions and use them as our own. We also learned how to make our homemade functions so we can use it ourselves. As a continuation from the last lecture, today we will find out exactly what functions we can use from other people. From the last lecture, Stacy, she created two functions. One added two numbers together, and one multiplied two numbers together. And I borrowed them to solve my personal math problem. Now, when Stacy was writing her functions, she didn't care about my problem. She has enough problem of her own. She probably wanted to write the functions to solve her own stuff. Let's say she was trying to solve this equation, 4 plus 9 times 3. If we go back to her code, let's write down the equation she was trying to solve. 4 plus 9 times 3. The logical step to solve this problem is to first multiply 9 and 3 together and take the result and add it to 4. She would first call the function multiply and tell her to multiply 9 and 3 together. She would call the result A. If the function worked correctly, A should be 27. She will call the function adder and add 4 and A together. She will call the result answer. And lastly, she will print out the value of answer to make sure it worked. So, if she did this correctly, she would get 31 when she runs the program. Let's try to run the program. See how it prints out 31? That's the answer. Now, I want you to remember that after Stacy had programmed, I have to solve a problem too. So in my code, I imported Stacy's functions and used them as mine. But now that Stacy has added code inside her program, I have a problem. When I import Stacy's code, her entire program will run. So if I were to run my program, it will print out her program and mine. Let me try to run my program. See how it prints out both 17 and 31. 17 was for me, and 31 was from her program. I don't want her program running in mine. I just want to steal her functions. So what can I do? Nothing. I can't do anything. It's all up to Stacy to be nice about it. If Stacy had cared enough to add one little line, everything would have worked fine. This is the line. Run the program only if the name of a program is the same as the main one running currently. So when my program is running, she's not the main one, so her code won't run. Her program will only run if she's the main program. That's all it says. This way, I can share her program without interfering her stuff. I want you to notice that everything inside is indented. This shows ownership. Everything that's indented will be what's ignored when my program is running. Now if I save her program and go back to my program to run my code, everything that's in hers will be ignored. Let's run the program. Notice how it's only printing out 17. We're no longer running her code. Now that we have successfully stolen Stacy's program, I want to tell you a secret. You don't want to steal from Stacy. She's a bad programmer.
Hey, that's not nice.
You want to steal from the professionals. You can write your own functions, but a lot of times it's better to steal from the professionals. Believe it or not, we have been doing this all along. When we import the Tkinter library, we're actually using their functions. Let's check out what we've done so far. These are the commands that we have learned from the previous classes. As you can see, we use root equals tk to create a window, and button equals button to create a button. From this, you can guess that tk is a function, and button is also a function. When we call the button, we're telling another function to create a button for us. This is a good thing. You don't want to make a button or a window from scratch. It's a pain in the butt. When we import Tkinter library, just like importing Stacy's program, we are using functions inside Tkinter. This library is built into our Python, so all we have to do is import it. At this point, you might be wondering, so when we import Tkinter, what functions can I use? For this question, you're in luck. In the textbook, I have prepared a list of all the things you can make. Let's check this out in the textbook. From this chart, you see that all the function names are in the first column. The description of the function is in the second column. The third column shows you what it looks like. The last column gives you an example code to call each function. Now that you have this chart, you have the power to create a lot of cool stuff. You might be tempted to memorize this chart, but don't. Don't fall for the temptation. I don't have it memorized. I just use the chart whenever I need to make something. Before you get too excited and start programming, let's be patient and go through each one of them briefly. First, we have the button. The button is easy. You push it and it does something. Next, we have the canvas widget. You can use the canvas to draw pictures and graphs. You can even put a digital picture in the canvas. Make sure that the picture is in a GIF format, like the way I have it here. You just have to make sure to put the picture in the same folder and put the name in the same location, and the picture will come out. The checkbox allows the user to check multiple items. When you ask somebody what kind of food they like, they might check Chinese or Italian, or they might check both. The checkbox gives people option to check as many as they want. On the next page, we first have the entry box. If you have ever filled out a form online or did a search on Google, this is what you type into. The frame widget is an organizer that organizes all your widgets together. If you have a couple of buttons, you might want to organize them into groups. Let me explain this graphically. In the window, you will create a frame. And inside the frame, you can create buttons. This way, by using a frame, you make your program look more organized. And it looks nicer this way. Let's check out the code for this so it's easier to understand. Remember how we normally put the button inside the main window root? Instead of putting the button inside the window, we put them inside the frame. As a result, the button will appear inside the frame. Let's run the program and see what happens. See how the buttons are organized into the frame? The frame widget allows you to make programs look nicer. Okay, let's go back to the appendix. The next widget we have is the label widget. This is pretty easy to understand. You create a label with the label command. Once you have created the label, you can control the font, the color of the font, and what you want to say. The next widget is the listbox. We created this in our first program. It is used to list a bunch of items together. You can add items, remove items, and click on the items. We'll go over how to do them in detail later. We all have seen the mini bar before. How it is used is easy to understand. However, it's a little hard to create them. Don't worry about it if it doesn't make much sense right now. We'll go over this more in detail later. Now, go on to the last page. The first widget is the scale widget. You can use this as a tuner for radio or use it as a control for the volume. It's a pretty useful widget. The scroll bar is kind of confusing. The best way I have found so far is to create a frame. Once I have created the frame, I put the scroll bar and the text field inside the frame. And lastly, I link them together. Let's check out the code that does this. The idea is simple. You create a scroll bar. You create a text box. You make sure that they're inside the same frame. Notice that they both belong to the frame. Then you link them together. To link the text box to the scroll bar, you should use the y_scroll command. Notice how the name for the y_scroll command is the same as the scroll bar, scroll me. Now, we need to link the scroll bar to the text box using this command. You're configuring the scroll bar so that it will scroll the text. If you're really confused, it takes a while to understand this. Just copy what I have for now, and we'll go over it again later. The last widget is called a top-level widget. This is basically another window. The first window you create, you will use the command tk. But the window after the first one could be created using the top-level widget. The only thing I want to comment about this widget is the geometry. The geometry controls the size and the location of the windows. The first number controls the width of the window. The second number controls the height of the window. When you run your program, the last two numbers controls where the window pops up. The first number controls how far to the right the window should be, and the second number controls how far down the window should be. And we're done. Today, we talked more about how we can link functions together. We learned that you can use commands such as name equals to main so that we won't run other people's programs when we use their functions. There are also a lot of professional functions that we can also use to speed up our programming. Depending on what library you import, you will have different capabilities. In the future, we will import libraries that will help us solve complicated math problems, as well as hacking into other people's computers. Not that you should be hacking into people's computers. We'll show you how to hack into your own computers. We mainly concentrated on the Tkinter library today, and we learned all the cool stuff that we can create with the library. I want to point out that even though we learned how to create them, we still don't know how to use them yet. In case you were wondering, I will cover them in the future lectures. For your homework, I want you to go ahead and try to create each and every one of the widgets that we went over today. Try to play with them and see how they react. You learn the most when you crash your computer. One more thing, please visit our sponsor at saeproject.org. The goal of the project is to provide a fun and a free education for everybody. So go check the website out. A lot more fun lectures will be posted at the website. For now, this is all the time we have. This is Chieh.